Uh, Hi everyone. Thanks for joining this workshop. Uh, yeah, Today Rahul Ramesh from Meesho will share his experience working with the web performance. I'm super excited to learn a lot more about web performance and how they are implementing it at Meesho. Yeah, and we'll get started with the workshop. Then, without any further delay, I will invite Rahul to the stage. Hi Rahul.
Hey Kiran,
Hi. Yeah.
how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Yeah, maybe we can also share our screen and
Yeah, sure. Yeah, can you see my screen?
yes, yeah, you can maybe switch to your slides or something.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay, I put it in the presentation mode. Hope
yeah,
you're able to see it, right?
yes, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, we'll get started then.
Sure. Hey, thanks Kiran for this introduction. Um, so hey guys, thanks for everybody who has shown interest in this, who has joined. For the next uh, 90 to 120 minutes that we have, we will talk about sort of uh, as you already know the like how do we optimize a page performance, right? To put it as a agenda perspective, this is how the flow goes, right? So flow would be something like we will start with some sort of the fundamentals, and then we will see what is web core vitals, right? What is web vitals, and then in that what are the core web vitals. We'll also see some of the measuring tools to measure these web vitals. We'll later see the very important part of the talk, which is the page performance impact on the business, right? Impact on the business, because that would be sort of eye opening for many people who wouldn't have seen the page performance things before, right? So that would be definitely an eye opening thing. How 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 much impact does a page performance can have. Followed by that, we will see the we'll have a live coding where so we will I have sort of a simulated web page, sort of a built sample web page, where we will analyze what kind of improvement opportunities that we have here, and we will take a step by step, and then also we will try to measure it, right? So keeping the time in concern, time in the context, so I have already made the before and after changes, but we will still do those sort of code level changes just for the for the audience benefit, and then we'll sort of measure the before and after changes as well, right? uh, and like after that section, we will talk a little bit of what are we currently up to at Meesho, right? With respect to the page performance, we'll talk about what are our a little bit of futuristic goals as well, the roadmap that we have, uh, and with that we should be good, right? So awesome. And coming to the uh, during the call, right? If there are any questions that you have, please feel free to post it in the chat. We will look back. We'll relook into the questions once the session is over. By the end of it, we will take up all the questions that are out there in the chat. All right. So let's get started. Awesome. So, very little intro about me. I'm Rahul. So, I have joined Meesho a little bit more than a year ago. It's been a great experience over here. Since our B2C pivotal, which has happened, web, buyer side web especially, uh, which was mainly used for the growth, now has become its own sort of its own thing, right? So web is going to be one of the key key verticals at Meesho eventually, right? So I totally have a 6 years of front end experience. So I have a total of around 7 years of experience in the industry. Yeah, that's it about me. We can get started uh, with the main part. So let's get into the main part of the presentation workshop, right? So what is Web Vitals, right? So let me give you a few things before I go to Web Vitals. So we know that there are so many web pages, so many websites out there, and SEO is one of the like it's tough, it's opinionated. Many people invest so much, spend so much on the SEO to improve their website's SEO, right? To get that organic improvement, organic traffic to your website. So we all know that, and as part of that, like Google came up with an initiative to introduce some of the speed and the interactivity, how good user experience does a page is giving. So all of those aspects, Google came up with an initiative where it, there was a need for sort of a unified way, right? So unified way to measure things, right? So that's where Web Vitals came into the picture, and now Google has also made sure that based on the Web Vitals, your SEO ranking will also be impacted, right? So that's one of the main levers. Then the Web Vitals is going to be one of the main levers for SEO, right? So now in the Web Vitals, we have like for example, whatever you see that is listed down are the core Web Vitals. I'll come to that. Before that, we have total blocking time, right? And we have speed index, and we have FCP, first contentful paint, along with the three already listed here. So then the question comes into the picture: what are core Web Vitals? Like, why are the other three Web Vitals are not there, right? So these three are quite important, and indirectly this also accounts to the other Web Vitals that we have, right? So that's the reason we will be looking into the mainly the core Web Vitals itself, right? Let's talk about all of these three things in detail in the coming slides. Great. So what is LCP? LCP, it's a largest contentful paint. So what does it mean by, what does that mean? So for any page, when you are seeing a page, right? So whatever, like if I have to put it in a layman perspective, whatever the content that first occupies the user, right? So that's sort of a largest contentful paint. For example, let's say only the header comes into the picture. Not not necessarily. This need not be the LCP, right? This need not be the LCP element. So it is that element on the page, be it an image, be it a text block, which occupies a considerable amount of that page, and also is one of the critical part of the page. So in this case, if you look at this particular page, so the largest content over here is the image, right? This image. Let's suppose if the image was not there, what could have been the, okay, let me come back. What could have been the largest contentful paint here? So it could have been the 9 similar products, or else it could have been the entire product pricing and the naming section. So how does Google measure largest contentful paint? Whenever you start painting, whenever your page starts rendering, as soon as it sees certain elements, it starts firing the LCP events. Till what time will it keep firing? Until it sees a considerable amount of screen getting occupied, right? Getting already rendered. So for, let's suppose we render the header only first. So Google treats the header as a LCP content and then fires an event. And then let's say we show this. So now if this is within the time of critical rendering, then the image would be considered as the LCP element. So I hope this is making sense, right? So LCP is the element which is most prominent in the viewport that you are going to see when you visit a page for the first time, right? And we have a like metrics range as well, with which Google treats a page as a good page or a needs improvement page or a poor page. So if your LCP is before 2 seconds, so basically what does that mean? So if the element that is the LCP element is taking more than 2.5 seconds to render, then it goes to the needs improvement category. Let's say if it takes more than 4 seconds, then it goes to the poor category, right? If it takes less than 2.5 seconds, then that's your page is doing quite well. As soon as users try to view your page, they are having a quite a good experience, right? So that's what LCP means here, right? So with that, let's move to the next thing. So we have FID. So as we saw in the previous slide, so let me come back to the previous slide. So here, what does it measure in the tagline? If you see, it measures the loading performance, right? How fast your website loads, how fast your website renders, web page renders, right? So as long as you make sure that a ample amount of content is visible to the user as quickly as possible, your LCP or your loading performance will do good, right? Great. So now let's talk about FID. It's basically first input delay. What does this measure? It measures the page interactivity, right? So like it is very important for a web page to render as soon as possible, but at the same time it is important for the same website or a same web page, as soon as it renders, it should be able to respond to the users interactions, right? So let's say we render it, and then um, lot of JavaScript we are sending to the browser, and JavaScript has to get executed, and then the event binds, then sort of events work. So in that case, all the user sees something, right? For example, if user sees here, he should be able to scroll the carousel to the next thing, or swipe the carousel, right? So it should not be that we are just showing the content but not caring about the interactivity. So this is also one of the important aspects of the core web vitals, right? So how does Google measure it again? So as I mentioned, so this is a click event that can be happening, right? So similar to that, it can be a scroll event, it can be any other events which involves user interaction, right? So again, what's the ideal behavior here? As soon as the page renders, right? So try to make sure that the sort of the viewport content, the ATF content. I'll come back to that. So whenever you interact, it should not take more than 100 milliseconds for the page to respond with something initially, right? It won't. So once the JavaScript everything is rendered, it won't take time. It will be immediate. But let's say when the page is loading, it has just loaded. Now you want to tap on something. Now you tap on it, and if the page has to be in the good category, it has to respond to those events within 100 milliseconds, right? So how does Google measure it? So Google looks for the event listeners that you would have attached to this, right? So that's how Google tries to measure the FID, right? So again, anything between 100 milliseconds to 300 milliseconds of interactivity time would like push your page to the needs improvement, and eventually if it is more than 300 milliseconds, it is treated as a poor page. All right, so we'll move to the next one. So let's say we have CLS. So very important here, before I get into here, like keep on observing this. Okay, yeah, so this is the let me come to the gif that I have added here, but before that, let me explain. So CLS measures the stability of your page, right? Stability can be in many ways, right? For example, your page has to load and it has to be consistent specifically. So what does CLS measure in this case when I say a stability? So let's say you load a page quickly, but let's say there are certain low hanging fruits where, for example, image or a video or some other component which is taking more computation on your server, and then it is getting delayed, right? And it comes a bit later. Or let's say your browser itself is taking more time to render that part. So it should not happen that uh, you show something first, and then when the other element comes, you reorder the elements, right? So that's again sort of, you guys would have seen this happening in many websites. So you guys try to, like, specifically the ad, wherever there are more ads, right? So you try to click on something, and at this, by the time you click on something, the element would have gone somewhere, not just for the click. Let's say you would have been reading something, so once something else loads, the content completely shifts. So that is a bad behavior, right? So that is a bad behavior which we should try to avoid. So whatever the jiffy that you guys are seeing here, so I've tried to emulate the same thing here. So what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to like render everything before, because the first image can take some extra time, right? The to download and then render. By the time everything else could have would have got rendered. So if I don't take care of the CLS, this is how it will work. So initially, yeah, let's wait for the Jiffy to rerun. This is a loop, the running in the loop. Yeah, so initially I'll render it like this, and then when image loads, it pushes all the content below, right? So it's not just pushing one content. In this part, in this particular JF that we have, it's only the one element, looks like only one element is pushing everything else, but internally it is pushing a lot of layouts, right? Like the pages consists of multiple layers. So it is pushing a uh, lots of elements down, which can impact the other elements as well. So CLS measures those things basically. CLS measures the cumulative score of all the unexpected shifts. It's the sum of all the shifts that happen within a certain period, basically, right? So let's say this happens, like, let's say this comes, and then we show a loader and then eventually load it. So that might not be a CLS issue, but within a particular entire page life cycle is there, no? So that's where, if a element doesn't have a position and then it tries to push other elements, that's where it will be counted as the CLS issue, right? Right. We have a threshold here, by which again, the Google, the metrics that we have, basically anything before zero point 0.1 of a CLS issue, we will have it in a good category. Zero point 0.1 to 0.25, we will have it in needs improvement, and anything more than 0.25, it will be a poor. Right. All right. Yeah. With that said, uh, let's go to some of the other web vitals which I have not touched upon as well. And before that, I'll sort of take you guys through one of the important things again, in the page performance. So whatever the best practices that you follow, whatever the changes that you do, measuring the metrics is the answer to validate whether your changes is working fine with the real users. So this is one of the greatest challenge with respect to the page perf, and there have been vast amount of improvements recently that has happened to get to know the real time users, how they are facing, how they are sort of having the experience of these pages, right? So of your web pages. So we will see all of those things. How can we sort of get a uh, quick way to see how your page is behaving with some sort of emulation, and then you also want to see, for example, the business impacts, right? So you will have to see the real time users experience, all of those things. So we'll try to see one by one. right? So this is where we'll also talk about the other web vitals that I was talking about, right? So let me go to the page speed insights that we have here. So this is again one of the, so you guys would have seen the Lighthouse scores. So I think Lighthouse, this uses the page speed insights, uses the Lighthouse internally. uh, this is this is the go to tool to use to first measure your website, how your website is doing. So right now, uh, let me take one of the coding sample itself that I had, right? So we'll go through this uh, lined up. So I have sort of pulled up my own playground to explain this. We'll talk about this eventually in a bit. So yeah, so you can start analyzing the page. So it analyzes both your mobile and desktop. So for the entire call, entire workshop today, we will only focus on the mobile page, right? Our focus is majorly on the mobile page. Uh, uh, like desktop can be sort of avoided for now, mainly with respect to the timing perspective. And at the same time, mobile is one of the key things in web, right? More than desktop. When you see the most of the use cases, most of the business use cases, not all, but most of the business use cases. So specifically with e-commerce also, we have mobile as a major use case, right? So yeah, we'll stick to the mobile thing. Awesome. So we have got certain scores here, right? So let's see. What all does it speak about? So this is the score, and this belongs to a poor category now, right? So before talking anything, let's talk about the sort of other. One second. No, not this. Okay, let me skip this for now. I'll come back on this. So let's see the calculator. So this is very insightful. This is going to be quite insightful. So how does your page gets the score that you have got already? It measures all these six web vitals that we have, and there is a weightage to it, right? So there is a weightage to it. And if you see what is the largest weightage, so that we have is TBT and LCP, right? TBT has 30% of the weightage, LCP has 25% of the weightage, CLS has 15% of the weightage. Time to interactive, whatever the FID that we FID and TTI are on or uh, similar to each other basically, right? So we have 10% weightage to it, and speed index and FCP, right? So this is how your score gets calculated. And now coming back to the page speed insights, where is this particular test being run? So we will get to see all of those information here, right? It says emulated on Moto G4 with Lighthouse 9.3.0. So this is very important. So this is not the real users value that we are getting. This is the emulation, and there can always, we can expect a variation here, right? So always do expect a variation here sometimes. So this is only the only, like, it can only help you for up to certain extent when you are in the development phase, right? So when you are trying to improve a page performance, to have a look at the quick improvements, if there are any, then the emulation makes sense. Also, like, works. For the real impact, you will have to still see the real time device, real metrics. We'll come to that. So as we saw, like, this is emulated, we can see that the network condition also that it has used, and it sort of comes up with the frames also here, right? So this is the next section is very important here. So it says opportunities and diagnostics. So this can be the first phase whenever you want to analyze a particular page, right? So uh, like, I'll not be analyzing the entire page now because I'll be doing that in the live coding session. So I'll be just skimming through things right now. So we will have opportunities that like in the emulation, whatever the Lighthouse could have predicted, they would list it down here. But this is very important. These suggestions can help your page load faster, but they do not directly affect the performance score. So this is very important. uh, why we will why and how we will come back to it, right? And then diagnostics again is the report of your web page. You can understand like a report of your web page. So this is what we get from here. And now let me go back to this, the real time data I was talking about. So here if you see, let me open Meesho.com as well, right? So let me, right, so let me run this as well, so we will be able to see like the real time data that I was talking about. Might take a 10-20 seconds of time. Let's wait for it. uh, uh, uh.
Rahul, can you zoom your screen a little bit because the font size is very small? Yes,
Better.
this looks good. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So yes, this is what I was talking about. So we'll see, irrespective of the scores that we have here, uh, the main important aspect here is the real time data, right? So the real time data, what does it say? Computed from the core web vitals metrics over last 28-day collection period. And this is done by basically the data studio will have all your metrics stored, and then the report is coming from the Chrome UX report. So this is very important, guys. So this is also called as crux report, right? So what does it have? It will have a detailed sort of the progress of how your pages are behaving on a real time device. So Google collects all these informations whenever your page loads, and then it stores in the data studio, and then you can get to know the reports by going to the Chrome UX report, right? But you can generate it on the data studio. So now we see that like users over like so in this, basically whatever the last 28 days whatever you have changed would not have the sort of the metrics would not contain those the last 28 days. So what does it say? LCP is somewhere around 4.5 seconds, which is in the red zone. FCP is also 3.5 seconds again, which is in the red zone. CLS, which is in the green zone, and FID. So this is the close to experience that you can get to see how your real-time users are experiencing your web page, right? So that is it about the page speed insights tool that we wanted to talk about. I'll quickly uh, check upon this as well, right? You guys can experiment this out. This is gonna take more time. That's the reason. So whenever you want to debug a little more, like understand a lot of things, right? So this is a great tool. This is a great tool to understand your page much better. So you will get to see how much scripting is happening. You will get to see how much of CSS rendering is happening, the painting, right? And like you will also get to see where is your LCP firing, where is your FCP firing, all of those things, right? So instead of going deeper into this, I would take you guys by going through the dev tools itself in the live coding session, right? So that's, so some match can be made from here to there. So yeah, do check it out, this is one of the uh, great websites that we have, great tool that we have for testing in details, right? So it also has many configurations. If you see, right, you can have a different locations, different browsers, and different device types. You also have a advanced configuration where you can emulate the network type as well, where you can configure the network type as well, right? So yeah, this is a great tool. Do check this out, right? Now let's come back. Yes. So we spoke about page speed insights, where we will see a lab data, which is nothing but a simulated environment, which I mentioned. So that's the lab data. And we also saw the real data, which is for the last observed for last 28 days. Now, we also skim through the web page test. So all of these are the metrics out there, the tools out there which you can use it for a more complex use case, for a more bigger businesses, or like where they are trying to put more like more efforts on the page performance. There are APIs available which you can integrate into your app, right? So one such the main API which we have is the Web Vitals API. Again, what does this give? This gives us the real time users experience, right? So just to see, it's easy to implement as well. So all you have to do is going to be something like this, right? So you get CLS, FID, LCP values. When so What happens, so whenever user uh, tries to load your page, if you have this particular script in your page, added in your page, you can have multiple ways to send this data to, right? You can send this to Google Analytics, you can send this to any other analytics third parties that you guys have, or you can have your own database as well. How is this going to be helpful? So the crux report which I told you, you will have to, there is a certain waiting period that you have. So it is under being developed is what I'm guessing. So uh, like what at the current stage, you cannot have the real time data. Let's say you release it today, you can't have the real time data reflecting tomorrow itself. It takes certain amount of time, and it doesn't work at a page level. It only works at the entire domain level, right? Entire website level. So that's where the API, the Web Vitals API, which we are seeing here, is very important. You can push this data to into your own databases, and then sort of visualize to track, right? To track how your pages are behaving, be it an LCP. You can see an average LCP of the exact all the users. You can see the extremes as well. What is the best LCP that I'm getting? What is the like worst LCP that I'm getting? All of those things can be done using this Web Vitals. And uh, if you are using Next.js has internally implemented this, and it has exposed another like API where you can define that particular function and then get all of those values, right? So you can check that out as well if you are using the Next.js there. Awesome. So yeah, that's about the measuring metrics. Now we will get to the next section, right? Okay, we are almost 34 minutes away. Awesome. Okay, so best practices, right? Again, as I mentioned, like every people have a lot of opinions, so that is the main reason why Web Vitals came in as a standard. And this is the some of the best practices, some of the common best practices. At the same time, there are even more advanced things that we can do, but at the same this is the minimum sort of best practices that we should all the website owners needs to sort of strive for, right? So first thing, eliminate render blocking resources, right? So what do I mean by that? So whenever you are rendering a page, whenever you are rendering a page, the first content that gets rendered has a huge impact on your Web Vital score. So like if you have a large amount of CSS, so CSS is a render blocking because it waits for the CSS OM to get created, which eventually combines with the DOM elements and then forms render trees, and then that gets painted. So it waits for the entire element that is there to get converted to DOM and then CSS one. So this is render blocking. Loading fonts without particular better strategies, right? So will result in render blocking as well, right? Going to the next thing. So this is about the render blocking. So make sure that you do not have any render blocking resources which will prevent your page from rendering quickly. So main some of the main things are like the CSS, the initial CSS that you send, and the fonts. Like if you are loading the fonts as in a blocking mode. right? Those serves as a render blocking resources. Uh, Great. So on top of that, actually, if your website is JS rendered, it's going to be very important because JS can also, the amount of JS you are sending, the JavaScript you are sending can also become a render blocking resource, right? So it depends. If your website is JavaScript rendered, basically, let's say client side applications, right? Great. So what is the next thing that we have? Sizing the images, very important, especially since we have varied set of devices right now. Sending a right amount or right dimension of a image is very important. For a desktop, you will have to send a high resolution, high dimension picture, right? Whereas you don't need to send the same thing for mobile. If you send, because the like kind of the hardware also, if you see, desktops would have a better hardware, whereas mobile will not have the similar ones. Although like we are seeing a good progress in there, but still there are many users who still have issues over there, right? So it is very important to size the images. uh, like easier way to do that would be if you are having a CDN. CDN has CDNs usually come up with a dynamic sort of ways to create your images dynamically based on the dimensions that you request for. If not, the easier thing to have is have a separate images for mobile, have a separate images for desktop. That should do as well. Great. The next thing that we have is the differ off-screen images. So before that, let me tell you what is off-screen, on-screen, what is ATF, what is BTF. So on-screen or ATF, ATF means above the fold content, is the content that gets rendered uh, like for the first time when you visit a page, right? In your viewport, whatever the page, whatever the content that renders is the ATF content. So this is very important for whatever you guys are going to go through eventually in this particular call, in this workshop, right? So uh, yeah, so differ off screen images, any images that are not part of the ATF, right? So you will have to make sure that you lazy render it, right? So we'll see why that impacts in the live session that we have. Uh, Great. So let's go to the next section where we have Minify CSS. I'll take the next section along with together Minify CSS and JavaScript. So this is the, I think this most of the people would follow this. I think the build tools that we already have make sure this happens by default. So no need to talk more detailed on this. So let me go to the next thing in that case. So remove unused CSS. This is also very important. As I said, CSS is a render blocking resource. Let's say you have uh, entire CSS for the entire page, or let's say for other pages also, right, which are not being used. Let's say there are some pop-up models on your page which you would have sent, and CSS would also have gone, right? So this CSS will not be used in the initial render. So try to avoid having that, right? So because it will help you like with the less main thread use, basically the lesser the CSS that you send, lesser the main thread that gets used, and then eventually the lesser it happens for the rendering phase, right? So awesome. So we have the next thing called serve images in modern formats. This is also one of the uh, one of the most important with respect to the images, and lots of people are pushing towards this, and like this will also sort of give a huge benefit as well. So what are modern formats? One such modern format is the WebP format that we have, right? Which will come up with a very like sort of a compared to JPEGs or PNGs, WebPs will have so high like it will have the lesser sizes, right? And the rendering wise, these WebP images has a better rendering strategies. And to but this is not supported by all the browsers as well, all the browser versions as well. So you will have to make sure that whenever you are making sure you are supporting a modern images, make sure that there would be a fallback of PNGs or JPEGs. uh, right, you can use some of the existing libraries out there. If you don't want to do this by yourself, you can check out Next Images does this automatically, right? It takes care by default. If the browser supports WebP, it sends at WebP. If the browser doesn't support WebP, it will eventually make it like request the JPEGs or PNGs, right? The next thing is the text compression, right? This is also quite well known, and then most of the bundling tools already comes with this. Two main text compressions that we have is gzip and brotli. There are like use cases out there where brotli is sort of having a better compression ratio recently. So that this is one of the, like, you can evaluate and then take care based on how it works for you guys. So brotli and the gzip compression basically, right? Preconnect to required origins. This is again important. Let's say you have an image in the viewport, you want to connect that image, you have that image in the CDN. Sorry, you have that image in the CDN. So it is ideally recommended to pre-connect the origins, right? Pre-connect your CDN. So what happens here? It will sort of establish the connection to the CDN or any server for that matter on a high priority. So when this happens, the resources that you are requesting will not go through additional handshake that for every such resource request, right? Reduce the server response time, right? This is again one of the important things. uh, for our pages, let's suppose e-commerce web pages, we'll have to like hit the multiple APIs in the backend to get the product data, to get the categories, to get many other things, right? So to get auth information, all of those things comes into the picture. So which makes it a case that we are taking more time on the server, right? So because you are also computing your HTML on the server, right? So you're creating your HTML on server. So all of these can take up a considerable amount of time for every request of a page. So like there are many ways to avoid these as well, which we will try to see in the next sections. So yeah, this is one of the best practices. Again, make sure that you do not have a lot of server lag for every page request, because this happens for each and every request to your server. Avoid multiple page redirects. On a very slight note, if you have more and more redirects, of course there will be a lot of network network talks, which is going to be a overhead. So it's as simple as that. Preloading a key request or key resources, very important again. So when I say pre-connect, you are establishing a connection with a server or a CDN with an origin rate. So similarly, you can preload certain resources. Why it helps? So let's say you have a hero image, whatever the image that gets rendered on the viewport, and you want to render as soon as possible, right? So when you preload this in the network request, this takes the highest priority, right? So with that, it helps the pages to render the highly important stuff as soon as possible. So what all things that you can preload? You can preload the hero images. You can preload the fonts, which is also sort of important as well, because fonts, as I said, it is also sort of a render blocker, right? Use video formats for animated content. Yes, again, GIFs are costly, and it blocks the main thread directly, whereas videos fetches frame by frame, right? So that's where this comes into the picture. If you are having a especially if you are having a video on the viewport, the ATF content I mentioned. So it's very important you make sure that you don't use a GIF over there. Instead, use a better video formats over there. Reduce the impact of third party code. um, Super important, and quite easily misled in this case. Quite easily we can fall into this. Many websites need, most of the websites need third party code, be it analytics, be it some measuring tool, all of those things, right? I mean, if you want to record your screens, or a hash, I think hash maps, or heat maps, right? So all of those things you need third party code. So make sure that they are not loaded on priority or not blocking. So basically they are not being prioritized over the other important resource downloads. So how do we make sure? The easiest thing to do is make sure if you are adding it using script, defer it as much as possible. The even the better thing to do with is try to lazy load after user interactions. So that would be the best thing. In some cases this can't be possible. For example, a page view event, if you are planning to send it on to a Google Analytics, so this can't be done on user interaction. So this can happen sometimes. It should be okay, right? So but yeah, this is again a very trade-off that you need to take a call, right? You need to take a call either with your team or the product teams. So it depends, right? Avoid non-composited animations. Again, very important. This can result in repaint, especially if you have animations on your viewport. Make sure that they are sort of not non-composited. What do I mean by non-composited? Let's say you want to animate the height. Do not animate the height and width properties. Instead, use transforms or translates, right? Transforms ideally is the better way. So because they run on GPU, and then they do not sort of force the other elements to reflow and relay out, right? Coming to the last thing, which is again one of the add-on if you can have, and this is slightly difficult to do it as well. So only the critical CSS and JS needed for ATF content. So what do I mean by that? So only CSS and JS that is needed for whatever the content that you render uh, in the viewport initially. So how is this advantageous? This helps you render your page super fast. At the same time, whatever is needed, you can lazy render after many, like with many strategies, like when user scrolls, or worst case with the set timeouts, right? So you can do that as well. But yeah, this is one of, with this there will be a huge impact on the score as well, right? So this is one of the add-ons that you guys have, and slightly difficult to do. All right. So yeah, with that we have sort of concluded the best practices. There are, as I said, there are more advanced things to do as well, but this is the like quite common ones. Sorry. Yeah. So cool. Let's now talk about the one of the key aspects I said. What is the motivation behind page performance, right? So why do we need to do it? What does it give us, right? So this is here is the answer. The business impacts that, and these exist out there public. All of these are sort of a case studies which are out there. We have put the source as well over there. uh, Great. So let's before we go to these impacts, as I mentioned, so there has to be certain motives to improve your page performance. So one thing is it improves your user experience. If it improves your user experience, how how all can it improve, right? So like uh, what will be the impact when the user experience improves? So that's what we have here. So first thing, economic times saw overall 43% better bounce rate by improving the core web vitals. How does bounce rate affect? So bounce rate, let me define bounce rate. So bounce rate is sort of measures how your users are coming to your websites. Are they sticking onto your websites, or are they leaving your website soon after they visit your page, right? It can be due to many reasons, but yeah, that's the sort of like overall definition of the bounce rate. So when you improve core web vitals, what happens? Your page renders quickly. You will have a better experience. Users will have a better experience, which makes them interact on the browser, on your page easily, which eventually leads to a conversion rates as well, right? So where they can click a hyperlink which might go take the user to the next page on your website. So basically this is where uh, by improving the user experience, you are making user to stay on your page as long as possible, right? So that's the result here. I think 43% of the bounce rate improvement is the uh, huge improvement over there. Tokopedia, for example, has improved LCP by 55% and saw 23% better average session duration, as I mentioned. So if the experience is better, you will go to the next page, so the session duration improves, and internally you will have a better eventually leading to a better revenues as well, right? So many companies spend a ton of amount on improving the for getting more and more users. All of these discounts, all of those campaigns that they do is to get the users and make them stick, right? So make them stick. So that's where that's very important. So by putting your efforts on core web vitals, Tokopedia has seen like 23% better average session duration. uh, Now we see a even more sort of uh, a business impact at the sales level here. So with the Vodafone Italy getting 8% more sales by having a better LCP, right? So these are all interconnected, as I said. So you improve your experience, users will spend more time, which will improve your bounce rate, which will improve your average session duration, which will again improve your click-through rates, right? And eventually lands you with better revenue or better sales, whatever that KPI is, right? The next thing again, Nika has has made a 40% improvement in LCP, which has resulted in 28% more organic traffic. And very key point here, from T2 T3 cities, which is where uh, the network can be not so good. The hardware infrastructures, the devices that they might be using are not so good, right? So, which is very important for e-commerce websites again. So now, similar to that, GEDI saw 77% reduction in CLS, which resulted in an 8% reduction in the bounce rate, right? Basically, 8% improvement or reduction in the bounce rate, right? Similarly, that we have two more things where they have directly mentioned that their mobile revenue increased by 42%, right? By sort of this they have also mentioned that this is a month together effort, right? So like there are people who have spent companies who have spent months on the web vitals improvement to get to to get to these stages, right? So here by improving the LCP, CLS, and FID, Swappy has seen 42% increase in the revenue, which is like huge, right? And next we have AliExpress. AliExpress improved the CLS by 10 times, which sort of improved their bounce rate by 15%. I've talked about a lot of business impacts over here. So we will, so coming to Meesho also, right? So I'll maybe talk about at the end, like what are the sort of impacts that we are seeing, sort of like, yeah, you will get more clarity on Meesho eventually. All right. So yeah, I think we are almost halfway through. I think we have, so this is the so far, like you guys have seen it theoretically, what is web vitals, and then what is the way to measure it, what is the importance of it, what are the best practices, all of this we have seen. But if we are, let's say we follow the best practices that are mentioned, we will have to compromise on many other things, right? So let's say we want to show a better animated video, we have to trade off with the web vitals over there. We have to sort of, let's say we want to show a carousel, show multiple images. So it's always, there is always a trade off between the kind of feature that you want to build and uh, the page performance impacts that it can have. So it's always going to be a trade off. You might have to take a call based on what is more needed. Let's say you are in a growth phase, you need a better traffic that is coming from the Google, so you might have to give more preference on the page performance. Let's say you are already in a growth stage and then you are in a retention state, retention state. Now you can push more on the features. So there are many such ways like which we will eventually sort of understand, right? So yeah, as I said, like that's the trade-off that you have to do, right? So with that, let's get to the live coding session that we have. So uh, like I have tried the honest effort to emulate as much as possible here, right? With the, like I've created some of my own playground page where we will try to analyze what are the areas of improvement, what are the issues that it has, and we will also try to improve certain things over there, right? So given the timing constraint, I have already done certain improvements which is exist already, but we will still go ahead and then analyze and try to make some of the changes, and then eventually measure the numbers over there, right? Measure the numbers after we improve as well. So yeah, let's get to it. So this is the GitHub link that I have. So the code is not yet there, so basically you guys can maybe start it out, or like just come back maybe in a day or so, so where I'll push the whatever the sample code that we go through today, I'll be pushing it to here so that you guys can also have a sort of a comparison from, we were here, we did so and so improvements, and then this is our improvement, this is our score. So you guys can eventually do a hands-on as well on top of this, right? Great. Okay, let's head to it. Okay, cool, awesome. So let me open the page. As I mentioned, we will be looking into the mobile version of it. So not sorry whether this is, I put it under my domain only for now. uh, this is a sample again, as I mentioned, sample website that I have built, right? And one more thing to note is this is hosted on Firebase. So key thing to assume here is Firebase functions sometimes to optimize. Google puts it into sleep, right? And then only when you keep on requesting it opens up. So that's why it might be slower sometimes as well. Great. I think this is the website that we have. So let me show you the feature wise. So we have certain images. If you scroll horizontally, right, and you have some text content and then some background images, you have the team related stuff, right? And yeah, so this is it, this is the website. Now let's measure the numbers, right? So let's measure the numbers. So if you guys remember, I already did go through this eventually. Okay, I think let me redo this, right? So let me redo this. This is already zoomed in. I did overwrite. So cool. As I said, first thing, understand by going through page basic insights. So this is very important, I guess. The focus here is the process, the steps with which you analyze and then come to certain conclusion. This is what you need to improve. The objective is not to improve the page from, let's say, whatever we have like 20s 30s score to 90 score. So that's not the objective. Go step by step, what are all the sort of easier ways to do at the same time gives a better reward. We will see that we will have to sort of like fix those things first, and then see if there are any other major improvements by doing some code refactoring or all the best practices that we have seen there. All right. So what's the score that we have? 27, right? So this is definitely not a good score, right? Although the page looks decent enough, right? Like it has quite a good images, right? All of these are good, but the score is really good, really bad, and users would have to wait for a lot of time, right? So now let's start off by analyzing it here. um, cool. So this is the lab data that we have. LCP is 21 seconds, which is huge, right? Blocking time is also 4000 milliseconds. That's also huge, right? None of these are great except the CLS, right? Maybe I should have emulated CLS as well, but yeah. So we have a CLS already improved. Great. So now let's concentrate. So what was the main thing I mentioned? Time to interactive, largest contentful paint are the two main things that we will have to focus on. And in that also, LCP is the first thing that we should focus on, because that has 25% weightage on it. And by doing this, we will also sort of see how to improve total blocking time, right? So LCP almost directly depends on the total blocking time as well, in certain cases. So total blocking time, let's say you take more time on your server, right? Or let's say you are sending too much JavaScript or too much CSS, which occupies a lot of main thread, right? So which is again a blocking time. So LCP, one or the other way, depends on the TBT. So we will focus on the LCP for now, right? So yeah, let's. What does it say? Opportunity says properly size images. One of the best practice that we saw. Serve images in XML format. Again, one of the best practices. Reduce unused JavaScript. So why is this? Because if you send like not needed JavaScript for that particular page, you are eventually ending up making your main thread occupied with executing this JavaScript, downloading and executing this JavaScript, right? So this is uh, not a great thing to have, right? Eliminate render blocking resources. One of the main things here, right? So we saw images. This is already mentioned. So if you see, the resource sizes are huge here, like 1.8 MB, right? It's huge, almost like everything is in MBs. What are all those? Like, for example, whatever we are seeing here, these gallery images, right? These are coming as 1 MB images, greater than 1 MB images, which is like which can be totally avoided, right? We it should be in less than 100 kbs ideally.
Rahul, can you increase the zoom a little bit?
Sure, sure. Okay, does this look good? Okay,
A little bit more, I guess,
okay, interesting.
if
Uh,
possible.
let,
If possible. Otherwise, it's fine.
yeah, let me try to make it a full screen if possible. Because if I go to another, okay, let's see. I think this is doing good. Some places
Yes, yes, yeah.
it
This
doesn't
is
do
good.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is good.
yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, so we uh, uh, where is okay? I think some of it has gotten hidden. Where is okay? Okay, sorry, my bad. Yeah, so we have it here, right? So this is the first thing that we have to do, right? Properly sizing the images, which it says 45 seconds of savings, which is great. But at the same time, i've, I've told you guys last some time back that can help your page load faster, but they do not affect the page performance directly, right? So it is important, but you will not see a drastic score improvement. If it says 45 seconds, you will not see the same if you do all of those things, and your LCP will not become like 2 seconds or 1 second or something like that, because This includes the entire page, not just the ATF content, right? So with that, okay, some duplicate. Okay, it's not duplicate. I think some Firebase related stuff. Maybe let's ignore this for now, right? So sort of not so considerable as well. Great. Now let's go to the diagnostics. So now we have figured out that the major issue that we have is with respect to images, right? Now avoid enormous network payloads, right? All of these are the images only. So we have seen this. No point in. So let's, yeah. So static assets with an efficient cache policy, right? So this is important for the eventual page loads. It is important for the page load. Again, this will not most likely impact the scoring. Again, this is very important. Ensure text remains visible during web font load. So here, I have purposefully made font as a blocking renderer, right? So unless you download the font, do not show the text is what I have made. So we'll see how do we improve as well, right? Uh, Reduce the impact of third-party code. Again, same one of the best practices which we saw. So there are lots of JavaScript that we are sending. For example, Google Maps that we are loading at the end in the footer is getting downloaded initially itself. GTag, Google Analytics, Google Fonts, right? See, these are all the third parties that we have where we can at least try to not have Google Maps. And fonts, we can't do anything. We have to be there. Like maybe one, again, it's a talk between you, the tech and the design team or the product teams, where instead of having multiple fonts, stick on to like one or at the max two fonts, which is a recommended way. Instead of even, let's say, even if you load the fonts, try to make sure that the ATF content always have one font so that you are only downloading that on priority, right? So we have the impact of third party code here. Does not use passive listeners to improve scrolling performance. Okay, this is something haven't seen for the first time. What does it say? To improve your page's scroll performance. Hmm. Touch and wheel event listeners. Okay, okay, got it. So there are no touch event listeners is what this is saying, right? So we will ignore this for now. Again, there are major pieces that we have. Anyways, this is just the analysis part. Image elements do not have explicit width and height. Why this can affect CLS? You guys can also see here, right? So if this can eventually impact CLS, but it is not right now. See, that's what you have to see. Whatever it is shown here, it is not on the numbers. It is sort of some best practices, and it is the tool is trying to measure the like go through your HTML. If there is width and height, if there is no, just mention that. So this is just the diagnostics. You can totally ignore to not have it as well if you are aware of what you're doing. Minimize main thread work, very important, right? uh, if you see here, rendering alone takes 5 seconds, script evaluations takes 3 seconds. So these are the main things which you will have to reduce. So in rendering, what is it taking more time? We will see it eventually, right? FCP, again, because of the huge content that we are seeing, FCP is also not so good. Awesome. I'll be going for skipping the other things as well, right? We will come back to it. I think these are the main things. So we saw it on the page speed insights. Now, one important thing is, let me go to the, sorry, I'm in a full screen mode. So let me, uh, uh, okay, I'll have to click on this. Cool. So now to have a better understanding. So this is even like very easily accessible, the performance in the Google Dev Tools. So what I'll do, I'll simply make it record, right? So let's see uh, how it is behaving. Where are we seeing? I'm not sure if this is showing the cached version. For better sake, I'll Kiran, can you please tell me if? uh, you can see my screen. Sometimes if I go to incognito mode, screen might go blank.
Yeah, I can see the screen, but the font says a little bit zoom will help.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yes, perfect.
Yes, great. So now let me record this, right? Not sure. Yeah, we'll see. Irrespective of the caching, all of those things. Let me stop it out here. Great. Let me open this in a separate window for a better understanding. Very important, guys. This is so we have frames, we have network, we have timings here, which is one of the important things. So, right, this is the stage where our page is started. So I'm going through the frames here, flow here. So where our page is started getting painted, and then our script started executing somewhere here, right? Again, things got painted here, right? So we can see various things on the main thread. What is happening here? So this is the uh, main thread task, which says it took 928 milliseconds, which is like way extra. This is what is causing the total blocking time, right? Similarly, we have so many tasks which are taking more time and which are blocking the main thread, right? And if you see, most of the time we are having a painting as an issue, right? So one major flaw or issue that we have is to do with the way that we are rendering the images. We can conclude by this. Now there was also time, so the network, main thread, where are the other things? Yes, timings, right? So we have timings here, so which is like you will understand a lot from this basically. So now it's we started seeing the first FCP is over here. We started rendering this quickly, right? But for our LCP, it took until like what second? So this is around 1 second. So this is around 996 milliseconds to almost 2996 milliseconds, right? So the LCP content being treated here would be the larger image that we have, right? So the larger image, right, on the background image, you can call it. So you can see the gap between FCP and LCP, which is huge, right? So with this, what is our conclusion? Images is the main thing, and the amount of JavaScript that we are sending can also be improved by, because if you see the content, we don't need any JS at all there, but we are still sending some JS. So maybe some improvement can be done there as well. Along with that, fonts is one of the improvement that page speed insights suggested already. All right, so with that, let me close this. Maybe we'll come back to it. Right. So cool. So that's where we have it. So let me take you guys through the code now. So this is I'm on the before branch right now. So this is deployed on the currently this is the code that is sort of deployed on the Firebase. Okay, let me also zoom a little bit here. Okay, this should do. Please let me know if I have to zoom more. Cool. All right. So now we'll see how we are loading the fonts, right? So let me take you guys through the folder structure. Ignore there are a lot of other things as well. Please ignore that as well. So just concentrate on this particular part here. Great. So we'll go to the main part here. Right, this is where again, uh, like one disclaimer that I have here is the code wise, like this is just built to analyze. There are lots of better practices wouldn't be followed in this particular code. You will see a like huge bigger components, all of these can happen, right? So but yeah, that's the sort of disclaimer. This is not, this is just built for the demo purposes. So now let's see the images that we have, right? So I have cover image that I have here, so which I'm loading. Now all I have to do is this cover one mobile image that I have. We will have to reduce the size of it. Okay, right? We have it here. What is the size that we have? Let me view in Finder. We saw the sizes as well. So we'll. It's almost 1.4 MB. So take a clear observation here, right? So if you observe this, the image is of 4000 cross 6000 dimension, whereas you are not using that bigger dimension, right? So if you see, the rendered size is 4000 cross 6000, the basically the image size, but you are only showing what, hardly like 400 to 240 dimension. So you can sort of have a huge improvement on this image by reducing the dimensions, and by converting it to a better formats, that's WebP as I mentioned. So similarly, we have other images as well that we see here, right? So all of these can be still improved, uh, because on the same analogy, like reduce the dimension, reduce the dimension, and then convert it to WebP as well. So this is one thing. Now, one more important thing, when I mentioned off-screen images, do not load your off-screen images at the starting, right? So how can how can we see it, right, happening, right? So let me refresh this page. So if you look at the network panel, what's happening here? All of your images are getting downloaded, right? This is the logo that we have, right? Here is the logo, which is okay. Logo is needed initially, which is getting loaded on high priority, which is good. Uh, right. Okay. Mm, great. So we have all the gallery images. Although only two are being shown, we are showing everything at once, right? Everything, we are downloading everything at once, not sure, right? So which is not needed. We can have a better strategies here. Whenever, let's say, user scrolls, we will load the next set of images, right? So there are many strategies by which you can do. Let's say you are on the first page here, you go to the sorry, you are the first image, you scroll to the second image. Now we can have a mechanism saying that if the user is viewing the second image, make sure that you download the third. All of these things can be possible. Like, of course, we will see if there are any libraries which can help as well with this. But yeah, this is the current state. And now we have like sort of other images here, right? Background images is also getting loaded. So that's one of the important key things to note. And we have the meet the team, where few things are again like the profile images are getting loaded directly here itself, right? These two are the profile images which could have been sort of lazy loaded. You have this logo, other, all of these logos are getting loaded uh, at the initial phase only, instead of lazy loading it, right? So those are all the observations that we have done here, right? And if you see the JS of it, right? So let's see the JS, how much amount of JS are we downloading, right? Let's talk about the you can ignore this. React Dev Tools only happens on the um, like development aspect, so this can be totally ignored here. We did not even see this. This depends on the like add-ons also you are having, right? So we did not see this in the diagnostics as well, page inside diagnostic as well. So we have something which is 141 KB. Very important to note here. We don't have any interaction here, right? All we have is the scroll. Why do we need 141 KB, right? So it can be again here purposefully I've done it, but it can be the real use cases are way more complex than what we are talking about, right? So we have sort of simulated for the demo purposes here. So now going by the JS bundles perspective, so we have 141 KB, which is huge again, right? So these are, what is this? We have some Google Tag Manager, all of these things which we have already seen, which we need to of course improve as well. Now we have a framework, which is again, this is being given by the Next.js, which contains all the React code. So again, with a little bit of extra effort, we can also make sure that we don't need the framework also, right? So because this particular page doesn't have any interaction, so we can avoid framework. Let's say we compute the HTML and then send it, so which is one of the, again, main part which we'll come to later, right? With that said, and also given the timing constraints, so I will only concentrate on something on the top stuff here, right? So we have 43 KB of additional JavaScript that is getting downloaded. These are all the components that we would be adding. Now I'm more interested in what is this 141 KB, right? So uh, it's, again, it's not, for the bare eyes it's not easy because it's all encoded. There is a library, like on Next.js provides, actually internally it is Webpacks, basically the bundle analyzer, right? Bundle analyzer. uh, Next.js provides a bundle analyzer which you can use to see, right? Let me show that. I think, I might have missed this part initially. I think this is sort of, let me look for the images. Yes, exactly. See, uh, perfect. So look at this, like how much this is giving. Let me open in the image in the new tab. See, you can eventually, like, if you install this particular plugin, you can find a way with that Next.js bundle analyzer. You get to see what's the content inside your JS bundles. Right now, what I did, I went here. I observed there is a 141 KB of a content JavaScript getting downloaded. I want to see what is in it. So I can analyze this. See, I will have it as part of like the top content itself. So here you can also sort of drill down. Here I won't be able to do it, I believe. Okay, glad that image zoom is working on the exact same lines here. Yeah, so you can eventually drill down to the least, most nested component page as well, to understand what all bundles are we sending. So with that in picture, I'm assuming we will do this, and we will figure out that we are sending a library, right? We are sending a material UI. So now let me go and analyze it, right? So in the code, I'll check if I'm importing anything bigger things, right? So exactly one thing that I had was here, exactly, right? I'm importing the entire material again, as I mentioned. So this is to simulate the demo behavior. That is the reason, because nobody in the real mind would do this, of course, right? On the real time, right? Real production environments. But sometimes things can happen that there are certain like experiences, or like people who have used the third parties like this, importing like this. When you import star as m, right? So you are importing the entire material library here, and let's say you are using it, and for now I have just used it like this. Let's say you are using it, let's say you are using something like m dot something, right? M dot something is just the accordion, right? You are not using anything else, just the accordion. But importing it like this will import the entire bundle, right? So which is not needed, right? So this is how you analyze. So you saw a bundle, you saw a huge JS that is getting downloaded. You analyze it by installing this plugin on your project. You can, this is a Webpack plugin, basically. Next.js is just a wrapper on top of it. Where was I? Yeah. So then later you can sort of, either, let's say, you, if you are using accordion, right? What I would do, I would use import accordion, right, from, right. So this is one easy way to do it, right? So instead of importing everything, see how the size reduced, right? See, the size reduced by huge amount, right? 130, 120 kbs to 13 kbs. So this is very important, like usual pitfalls that people will have. Great. So this is one important. So we saw images, what kind of images improvement that we need to do. We saw the JavaScript improvement that we need to do. Let's see the font related improvements, right? So let me, where have I did? Yeah, so here, right at the end, I have a fonts here. So here I'm downloading certain specific Google fonts here, right? Where I'm downloading a particular weights as well. So what's wrong here, right? Like whenever you download a font, it is always recommended to have a uh font face, not font face, I think swap. Let me just check that out. uh, Font swap, there is something, yeah, font display, right? Font display, there are multiple such things like font, like where it is auto and then there is optional, there is block. Basically block, it will wait for the content to download. There are, again, like I'll not get into the details over there. uh, but specifically what swap does here, it will use the fallback fonts if you have provided. Let's say you would have provided serif fonts, which are like browser default fonts, right? So it will, until these specific particular uh, fonts get downloaded, it will use the browser default fonts to show the content, and then whenever the font gets downloaded, it automatically swaps and then re-renders the content. So this is the best practice that Google suggests. If you don't have that, this can become a render blocking as well, right? So all I have to do is going to be sort of like font display, right? Font display equal to swap, something like this, right? So I'll have to do the same thing over here. So what does this help in? As I mentioned, so we will not block the text rendering, like until this font gets downloaded, right? So great. So we have seen three such improvements. Again, all of these improvements are almost like whatever we learned in the best practices that we had, right? So some of the best practices we have applied here. Some of the analysis, how to analysis, we saw how do you, what are all the tools that you will have to see to analyze, uh, and to come up with a conclusion to what to do here, right? So all these three action items, sort of improvements that we have come up with: fonts and JS bundle improvement, basically removing that library, right? And what else? The images improvement. So all, almost all of these three are not so complicated, right? It hardly takes me, like, let's say 20-30 minutes to do the JS and font related, no, sorry, actually 5 minutes to do the font and JS refactor that I did. And images, hardly, what will be the time consuming factor over there? All I will be needing is convert it to different dimensions, convert it to webp, right? That's the only effort that would be needed. So it is always recommended to go ahead and do this, but at the same time, make sure that you do not have too much of CSS and JS, other JS also being sent. If you are sending too much of CSS as well, your site would not improve even if you improve the images, right? So because CSS, as I mentioned, is a render blocking. It can block rendering the images as well. So which is very important. Right, so we don't have that case right now, because the page is quite simple. Not a lot of DOM nodes which we have in the page, so which is why we won't be having any such issues from the CSS. All right, so let me now switch to. I have already, as I mentioned, I have already made the code changes. Right, given the timing, we are almost like 90 minutes from the start, right? So we are hardly left with 30 minutes. So given the time, so what I have done, I have already created this where I'll take you guys through the changes now. right? One thing first change was I have removed this, right? Simple, very simple change. uh, and what was the other change in in here? I've added font. Okay, it is just display. Yeah, I have added display as swap here, right, which will make sure that it is not a render blocking. And what is the other change? The images, right? So now let's go to images. So very important here, important and very helpful library, useful library for a small projects for sure. If you are using it on a very high scale projects, you will have to think of it. You will have to analyze if that works for a scale or something like that. Where was it? Yes, here, right? So I have a image. So what am I doing here? So two things we discussed. We want to have a proper dimensioned images, and we want a advanced, or what was that, I mean, the latest. Sorry, I forgot that the WebP images that I mentioned. The, I mean, mm, the formats, right? So the recent formats, the advanced formats is what I meant, right? So I have used image library from Next.js, right? So this has a huge benefits, right? So this helps me. I can directly say what is the quality that I want to say, right? If I want to say point two, this means that whatever my image, compress it to a 20% quality of it. I can also mention size, right? So sizes, what kind of dimensions that you want, all of this can be done using the Next.js image component. However, for now, what I have done, I have reduced the images manually, right? Like for no reason, just that you can assume it that I might have missed it, right? So I have made a manual changes to images. Now our images are sort of okay. Let me do one thing. This will take some time, so let me start deploying the changes, right? So before anything else, let me I've started the deployment. Hopefully this is running. Yes, yes, perfect, right? So yeah, I have used images here, Next.js image. And if you observe what I have done, I have set priority equal to true for 2 to 3 images, I think 4 images, right? What are all those? The background image that we saw, let me show you guys. So this is the background image, and the first 2 images, right? First 2 images, and the logo that is hardly visible here, right? Right. So we have priority equal to true. What is priority? So when you add priority equal to true, Next.js images takes care of preloading these images, right? Which is part of the ATF content, and some of these are going to be the, like, the LCP contents or LCP elements as well, right? So that is the reason we have added priority equal to true. Do check out this Next.js images, which is a really great library or a great tool that we have. Great. Apart from that, like as I said, like all the images have been replaced. I've reduced the dimensions, and the image component that I have used by default converts it to WebP. If a browser is if a browser is supporting WebP, it converts it to WebP and then renders it. How does it happen? It happens dynamically based on the request. Like let's say you are serving the page for the first time, your WebP images wouldn't have been there. So Next.js images creates it in the memory, right? And for any eventual request, it serves it from the cache. So you have to be very careful when you are using it on a high scale project, because this can increase the server's memory, right? So because it loads a lots of it sorry, stores a lot of cached images, different versions of images, different versions of the same image, right? That's one important thing. Apart from that, I haven't changed anything. So let's look at the let's look at the deployment state right now. So slightly more time taking this one because of the other content that is here. So let's wait for this to happen. Right. Meanwhile, I'll talk about the one more important uh, thing that I wanted to talk in terms of in the live coding. With keeping the timelines, we have left this for 2 days. We In the next eventual talks, we will try and do more and more such hands-on sessions similar to this by sort of taking a dedicated hands-on session. So since this was the first session, we wanted to make sure that we will go with the theory as well first before going to the complete hands-on or the real-time use cases, right? So that was the thing. So what is the other thing that I wanted to talk about? So this comes back to what? Let me show the slideshow again. Yes, the last part which I have mentioned here. Serve only critical CSS and JS needed for the ATF content, which is very important. So here uh, what do we have here? Yes, so here we have a background image, some two images which shows up first, and then some content here, and anything below here, right? This is okay, this is just text content, can be fine. Anything below here, be it for this YS section, inquiry section, have an inquiry, will also have certain APIs that we are calling, some third party APIs. All of those constitute to certain JavaScript bundles, and the meet the team section, uh, everything like footer, right? So it's fairly simpler here, but you will again please observe the map as well, right? So these are all constituting to the low page performance here. So on this page things look simpler, but on the production, let's, if I take Meesho itself as an example, right? So had somewhere Meesho's product, let me open again, right? The I'll be talking about this product details eventually. Now let's say PLP, right? So we'll go to the product listing page. So here this is the more real time behavior that we have, and this can increase in the complexity wise. So here what all we have a hamburger menu which has tons of HTML elements, we have filterings, we have search, right? We have many products, and then a huge footer section. So in this case it becomes very necessary to load the critical things that are needed first, and then lazy load the other things. So here one thing that majorly that we can do here is we can only load these until the glide up the intro section, and whatever is the rest of it, we can load the JS and CSS needed for it lazily. How can we load lazy? There is something called dynamic. Again, this is a declarative way, easier way to doing it basically. Dynamic import Next.js. Please do check this out. So this helps in chunking your JavaScript and loading it as a separate chunk, right? So dynamic import helps in chunking. Now it's up to you, your strategy to load the required JS or CSS on the page, right? So what was my plan here? So what should we do ideally here? When the objective is we just want to render the content until here first, and then render things later. One easy way to do that would be load the, like as I said, make it a different chunk by using dynamic from the Next.js. If you are using Next.js, there are other ways to do that as well. If you are just using React, there are other huge libraries like loadable React, all of those things, right? So now all of these sections I lazy load. When will I load? Only when user scrolls. This is the easiest way to do it right now, right? We'll see the exact real-time behavior that is happening on Meesho eventually in next slides. So this is it. I mean, this is one improvement that I wanted to do it, but given the timing constraints, we might sort of take it in the next part or so, right? So with this, what will help? We will only download CSS for these three elements. and the glide up. We will not load anything else, right? And we'll only download the JS also needed for this only, the JSX content, all of those things, right? So with that, okay, awesome. So deployment has completed. So let me open this in a new tab and see if things are working fine. Uh, okay, yeah, as I mentioned, first time always Firebase takes more time because of its resource optimization. Because this is also mostly on a free tier, right? So that's the thing, right? Awesome. So great. Now let me see the images part. 1 second. I think there is something to do with the cache. 1 second. So git log rename. There was clear cache was supposed to happen because we are still not seeing the. Okay. So this is. Let me check where I have deployed status. Git status. So we are in the after. So basically, Firebase has this issue. What the when you are hosting something, the cache of it doesn't get cleared. So that is something which we need to think of. I wanted to just go so we don't have we have like hardly 15 minutes. Okay, let me do one thing. Let me try to find. Okay, so this is sort of because of the cache it is not working. But let me show you the already rendered pages. This is sort of not expected to happen. Okay, cool. So the same things happening here. Like okay, sorry, this is a local host. I had like made this happen on on the like on my own website here. So here we are loading a webp here, right? Webp images, right? So if you see now, only those images that are part of the viewport has got downloaded. So this is the page that is rendered. See, all I have done is I have just opened a network panel, and under that image tags, this is the image tags that we see. Whereas, also one more thing to observe here is even here, only those images that are required has got loaded. Just that we are not getting the webp because of the caching reasons, right? So with that saying, now when we scroll, right? See this, everything will result in 400 now because of the this was deployed before. See, now I'm requesting for everything, which is the thing that we needed. Now if you see everything else, by the way, this I had removed purposefully. It should also not impact much. So now see, we are also trying to load the other things as well. So here all these images are loading, although you see it slower. It is again depending on the server that we have. So the main key aspect here is we are loading it lazily, right? So this, we are able to see it here. Now what is the numbers improvement that we got? Let me actually show you the numbers improvement that I had already measured. Again, apologies for this sort of feels sort of skeptic here, mainly because of the cached issue that we have on the Firebase. So I'm not able to get the exact web images. So for the performance to be measured, web images was also one is the one of the main factors. So with this, what have we achieved? The numbers have become something like this, right? So it has like 66 is the almost like 66 70s were the numbers used, like the highest numbers that we got. It was ranging from I guess 55 to 60ish. So this is also 61, right? These are the two measurements that I did. Now let's see the LCP content that we had, right? So if you see roughly LCP is 2 to 3 seconds still, because as I mentioned, there are still some JavaScript, some CSS. The critical thing which I mentioned needs to be done to make it even more come to yellow or green zone, right? So now we will see what are suggestions. So in the suggestions, what did we had here? Uh, Here it was telling us to properly size images and serve images in next gen formats. These are the two major things that was mentioned. Whereas here we don't have that, right? We don't have that at all because we have sized the images properly. We have sort of moved it to web piece as well, just to sort of inspect it and show it to you guys. So this is the image, right? So from 1.5 MB it has reduced to 4.3 KB, right? So because I only need it for whatever the dimension that I'm showing. Again, this is also trade off. Again, you can sort of have a 4 KB to increase to 40 KB if you want better resolution as well. But as long as you are loading the T and preloading things, it should not impact too much as well, right? Right, because they are preloaded. Great. I think this is it on the live coding session. We are like almost left with last few minutes as well, so that's why I will go back to my presentation. Right, we will, where were we? Right, I'll quickly talk about the page performance at Meesho. Right, so uh, like there was a scenario where on our website more and more product detail pages got listed, and the search console started raising an issue saying your PDPs are in the poor zone. So which was a sort of an alarm for us, right? So that's where sort of an alarm, and like we went ahead straight away to improve these things, right? What have we done? I'll not take a lot of time here, specifically because this is very much in progress right now, and we are waiting for the metrics also to come in, like maybe 15 days or so. We are working on our metrics calculations as well. So in the next talk we will dedicate it specifically for Misho, right? So that it we will also have a continuity over there, right? So what we did, uh, like if I showed you the product details page, it contains the let me quickly show that it is sort of needed. Yeah, right. So let me go here. So what all this has, so much content to it, right? So it has images, carousel, product details, sold by, review information, and the footer, right? So reviews sometimes will have so many images, so many videos. So that's the complexity, right? So our JS bundles, everything was huge, right? JS bundles and the CSS that we send was also huge. Now what we did, instead of, like, we wanted to achieve this in a like speed over perfection sort of a manner, to get the improvement as soon as possible, right? With the I won't say the less effort, with by hitting the big elephant on the sort of improvements list that we had, right? So we changed, instead of loading the entire thing, we are now loading the mainly the critical thing, and only loading those resources that are needed for this. Of course there are so much improvements that we have still in the roadmap, but this is the so far the major thing that we have. We will load we'll show a spinner and then eventually load the next content, right? So this is sort of having a better sort of like scores. With respect to scores, where we stand, we were somewhere around 30s. After this we scored somewhere around 60s, like lower 50 lower 60s to like somewhere around 55 to 65 is where we are ranging right now. So this is the improvement that we have got. On the business impact wise, we will get back sort of, we are seeing a better improvements with the bounce rate, but however still we have not concluded on the metrics measurement because of the certain challenges that we had, right? Yeah, I think that's that's it from my side. uh, we'll open up for Q&A, Kiran.
Uh, yeah, thanks, Rahul. Yeah, really nice workshop. I learned a lot today. Yeah. So, yeah, you can also look at the questions in the comment section, but I will also start projecting one by one. Um,
Okay, Kiran, can you please share your screen if possible?
I will project the questions on the screen. Let
Okay,
me.
okay, that should work.
Okay, so the first question, if something is rendered inside a iframe for that, can you
Sorry,
see the
sorry.
projected question?
If something is rendered inside iframe for that page, does that affect the page? Yes, it can. Again, it depends how you are loading the page. If you're loading it as part of the initial sort of the ATF content, it definitely affects. Why? Because if you are in the iframe, your page has to load first, and then iframe has to load its source. So which is again not a great way to do it. Yes, I mean, not, like, not the recommended way to do it. Yes. When you consider mobiles, many mobiles have different heights. How do you decide ATF content in that case? Very good question. It totally depends on your user base. One easy way how we do it is sort of go through our analytics over last an year or so, come back with what all different devices that we have, what is the average height of the device. So try to work for that. As part of accessibility, can we make our app equally pleasant and maybe equally fast for requests originating from slow network area or slow mobile phone? Not sure if I understand the complete question. As part of accessibility, can we make our app equally pleasant and maybe equally fast? What do you mean by sort of accessibility? That's where I think I need to understand the question better.
Satya, you can post a clarification to this question if you can see this. For now, we will move on to the next question.
Have you used web workers? If yes, please tell your experience with them in real time. No, not yet. Again, web workers help, like, taking your high computation to the another thread. Agreed, but at the same time, we haven't evaluated it yet. We first want to go by sort of the critical path that I mentioned, and then step by step, maybe any such high computations that we have sort of move to web workers. So that's sort of in the pipeline, but nothing yet right now. Links could be using async or defer for fonts also. Yeah, async you can, but I think, as I mentioned, fonts are better rendered when you use preload on the fonts. Like, it will help you download your fonts quickly. Yes. In plain HTML CSS, there is a way to say which image to pick based on the dimensions of you. Maybe picking that approach could help. Yeah, you can still do that, but one easy way to do that would be, as I mentioned, so if you have a average device width and height, you can have images work for that device, and which would ideally take care for other devices as well, instead of going with image dimensions specifically for every devices, right? Specifically for devices. Instead, like, if you can come up with such for an average device, aspect ratio takes care of it, right? Yeah, that's the challenge usually all the web developers will have. I think that should still work. That's working for us. Yeah. Have you used third party kits for YouTube, Maps, Chat, etc.? Any trivial libraries for it? We haven't used it at Meesho, so this Maps I have just added it for demo purposes. Uh, YouTube, anything like this, we try to make sure that we lazy load this, right? So it will not be part of the initial server side rendered page that we do, right? It should not be, because these can like impact your first load JS. As I said, it can take a huge amount of server time as well. I hope that answers the question. Thank you for the informative session. Great. It was. Hope things were helpful. Apart from following best practices, how often should we measure page perf? After every build or after some gap? How do you do it? Wow, this is definitely a great question. This is definitely one of the challenges in the real time, and the challenges that we are also sort of trying to fix on. How often, again, it the best way would be, if you have a, like, let's say, if the web vitals are very important for your website, try to have it either through the API, the web vitals library which I mentioned. Try to send it to Google Analytics or some of your own analytics partner that you have, and maybe you can sort of uh, like have a look at like every 15 days or something like that. But the better way would be to have a certain trigger if the variation happens more. Let's say you have an average LCP of 2. If it becomes like 20% increase of 2.4, then that's an alarming state, right? So we haven't come back on the exact thresholds. Maybe what we are doing right now, from that we will have certain answers in the next call on this. However, you can use the crux report on your entire website, which will give you like last 28 days data. How do you detect users have left your site, which leads to the bounce metrics? Um More of, so again, if I'm right, I'm not too sure on this right now. If I'm right, so let's say for every page user visits, we hit a page view, right? When user performs some interaction, so that's, we sort of form a funnel also, right? Like you are in the home page, you go to PLP page, so that's sort of the user journey there is, came to your home page, went to PLP, went to PDP. Now let's say user comes to home page, we hit a event, but we don't have any other events after that, right? Let's say scroll events, let's say any interaction event. For example, even when you click certain buttons, let's say user clicked on a cart on homepage, we track events there. So if the event just has page view, I think that should be good enough to call it as a bounce. But yeah, I'm not completely sure on this. Yes,
Yeah, I think
equally
this is
good.
a follow up to the previous question. Yeah,
Can Okay, the
the
accessibility.
accessibility question. Yeah.
Equally good
So
experience.
I guess what he meant
Okay.
was
Yes, understood. Understood. Yeah, yeah. Slow mobiles, exactly. It's very important, especially if you are an e-commerce company and T2, tier 3 cities. People are using your websites. As I mentioned, they would have a like hardware wise, there might be certain phones which they might be running on 3G, slow 3Gs as well, slow 4Gs as well. So how do we sort of measure? So that's the main thing why page performance is needed. The real Web Vitals API that I mentioned, the data that it gives will help you sort of understand your real-time users' behavior as well. You can get to know with that whether they are using 3G, whether they are using 4G. All of those metrics can be calculated, and you need to take a call based on that. So there are like way more advanced ways which we can do as well. For example, you can cache your page instead of calling the server every time. Let's say you cache it and then keep on revalidating for every 30 minutes, right? If you can afford to do that, if you have less amount of pages, basically static render the page. Other ways to do that would be edge caching. This is edge caching. This is caching, and edge caching is you cache your HTML and then put it onto the CDN directly, right? Serve it from the CDN. It will be quicker. There are other even better ways to do it. Would be come up with AMP pages as well. So again, there are lots of trade-offs, lots of decisions that you will have to take care of it. But yeah, this is how you can, various ways you can address it.
got it.
How can we use page speed on pages which require login? Um, we, at least for us, we don't consider login when we are measuring the page performance, because SEO is only for the non-logged in users that we have, right? So, but still, to answer your question, how can we use? Not too sure. I mean, like, haven't came across this use case though. Not too sure on this actually. Maybe if we get
Got it.
something,
Yeah,
we follow up with
got it.
in the next part. If you have, yeah, we can try to answer that as well. But yeah, at least since we don't have that use case, maybe we haven't thought of that.
Got it. Makes sense. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, a really useful session, Rahul. Yeah, we liked it a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Thanks.
it's
Thanks a lot.
practical also. Practical and it's very important topic as well.
Yeah, I think, yeah, definitely, Kiran. I think as Satya mentioned, it is a complicated topic. It is sort of more of a opinionated topic, more
Yes.
complicated. Like the challenges over there are like multiple browsers, the real time understanding which you have, real time getting that real time behavior. All of these things are very, very, way hard, and then not many people have also achieved a better page performance. Even if you look at the top e-commerce or top not just in India, across globe, right? Top websites, any be it for any, it is tough. It is tough for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure,
And
I
requires
hope.
a lot of effort and research as well.
Yeah, definitely, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I hope like it was a good session. We will also eventually have a feedback. So I would request everybody to come back on the feedbacks. Yes.
yeah,
Anand has a question. What is the tech stack you use at Meesho Frontend for web? So for the buyer side, we use React, and Next.js is our framework. So specifically, we want to have a server side rendering, and yeah. So and usually other things would be uh, yeah, that should be it. I think others are all more of standard stuff only. Yeah.
yeah. How do you handle CSS? Any particular? Uh,
Oh yeah, maybe I should have talked about that as well. So
yeah,
CSS, if you are using style components, way to go. But just to make sure that you also want to have a critical CSS and critical JS, which is critical CSS especially. A great thing about style components, it helps you get the critical CSS easily. However, there are some catches. If you have too much of the content on the page, it's as good as not a critical CSS. But yeah, style components is the way to go for us that we have seen. Yeah, that's the thing actually.
and state management.
State
Any particular?
management, uh, usually the Redux, I think. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
Again, specifically with respect to the page performance, not much impact on what kind of state management which we are using. So
yeah,
yeah, that's, I think, yeah.
yeah. I think that's all the questions we have for now. Uh,
Awesome. Uh,
so,
just,
can you share the links for the
yes.
PPT if it is already published?
I will share it eventually. Like maybe give me like
Sure.
a day or two. Basically, like I have
Yeah,
the
sure.
GitHub repo I've created already, but I haven't pushed the code. Also, I'll try to push the code also in a day or two because
Okay,
I had to do it on my because of the timing constraints. So we'll push it
got it.
over there. Yeah, you can eventually post it on your social handle
Yeah.
as well.
So, yeah, if you are looking for the links for the presentation and code, do check out our Twitter and Meetup page. So, I think once Rahul gives us the links in couple of days, we will post it on Twitter and the meetup.com. Okay, do check those things. Yeah. Uh,
Got it. I have last. Let me take last 2 minutes, Kiran. So
yeah, got it.
last 2 minutes. Yes. So thanks a lot, guys, for joining the session. As I said, like as Satya also mentioned, it is sort of complicated. I hope we have tried to sort of like touch upon the tough parts of page perf as much as possible. Like feedback from you guys would be appreciated and will help us come back with the better content as possible. And yeah, like we have a like this is to talk about the careers that we have, the like like you can work with us. There are various openings that we have please do check it out. The Meesho.io, which is specifically for the careers front, right? With that, thank you. I would like to paste this on the chat. Just a second. So you can visit our social handle. We also have a tech course on Meesho meetup as well, so you can uh, keep an eye on it, so for the further sessions on this. Great. Thanks, guys. Let me share this link with you. Please spend like 2 minutes of your time to sort of fill it in. Let me open it in. I think, let me do one thing. I had not joined so on YouTube, right? So that's why it was sort of, let me, yeah. So let me put it. Oh, I is there a, okay? I can chat now. Sure. Let me post the sure Satya. So let me post both LinkedIn and my Twitter handle as well, where I'm planning to share the similar stuff. So let me sort of, so you can follow Mishu's as well, Mishu's Twitter handles as well. So for any further follow-ups, let me share the other handles. One second.
Rahul, if you
Yeah.
encounter any problem with posting links, put it in the private chat.
In the private chat on the,
Yeah, on
oh,
the
I mean,
StreamYard. Yeah,
okay, okay,
because I think YouTube doesn't allow you to post the links. I guess if you can post, it's fine. If you couldn't post, you can put it in the private chat of
okay,
StreamYard.
okay, got it. I was able to post it actually, and my maybe from my personal chat
No,
maybe,
we could
I guess.
no, we couldn't see the links. I think YouTube doesn't.
Can
Yeah, we can't
okay.
see
Let
the
me
links.
post it on the StreamYard then. Okay,
Yeah,
let
put
me
it in the
post all of
private
these.
chat. I will put it in the comments. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
okay. I
it's
can
it's a
see this.
restriction of YouTube. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It
Can you
it
help
allows
me
only
with?
the organizers to post the links. Others can only post
Okay,
the test messages.
as a private message on StreamYard, or how do I do it?
StreamYard. Yeah, StreamYard. Yeah,
Oh, okay. I see it here. My screen was sort of zoomed,
yeah.
so I was
Frozen.
unable to see
Okay,
it.
okay.
Yeah, please. Can you please like post this to the people so that they can give the feedback?
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah. Let me post it.
Okay.
The first one is the feedback form.
Yes, first one is the feedback form. Yeah, that's main important, very important.
Yeah. Okay. So the next, yeah. Okay, yeah. So I posted the feedback and your LinkedIn and Twitter. So
Okay.
do we have anything else to share?
I think, yeah. Only request would be to just share the feedback. Yeah,
Yes, yes, yeah.
from the
Yeah.
viewers. Yeah.
I think it would be really helpful for us as well in the future for the future sessions. So please share the feedback. I think the link is in the YouTube comments. And yeah, do connect with Rahul on LinkedIn and Twitter. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I think
Amazing.
that's all we have, Rahul. Uh,
Yeah, sure. I think it was thanks, Kiran. I think you have a nice ecosystem, a good
yeah,
ecosystem for sure.
yeah,
Thanks for
really
hosting.
enjoy this kind of interactions because we get to learn from each other, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's a very starting stage for us at Meesho as well. So hopefully we have more and more learnings from these sessions, and then we can eventually have a improved sessions if there are any areas for it. Yeah.
good. Yeah, yeah, looking forward to hosting more sessions. Yeah. Okay. See you again.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Rahul.
So
Thanks everyone for joining. Yeah, we'll be announcing more events in the coming days. Yeah, stay tuned for more announcements on our Twitter and meetup.com. See you all again. See you again, Rahul, soon.
thank you, guys. Bye.